Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Snarp Fangle Podcast.
Welcome.
I am your host, Jacob Metzger, along with my co-host, who some in the backwaters of Louisiana refer to as David. Let me introduce you guys to my wonderful co-host, the illustrious David. David, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah. I see your cup of Tapatio on the table, and it kind of concerns me. Are you okay? I mean, are you just trying to clear the sinuses? Or
Well,
what's going on? What's happening, sir, David?
if you didn't already know, I often have a mug of Tapatio as a refreshing nightcap.
And you never touch it during recording. I'm very surprised. I appreciate it. You know, I appreciate your consideration, your courteousness, if we say. You know, I appreciate you not taking a. I can smell it, man. It's strong. That whole Tapatio. You know, it reminds me of the very famous Red Cloud song of the same name. But I think we'll. You know what? We should probably listen to that right now. How do you think about that? I mean, it sounds like a great time. I love the music video. You got chicks washing cars, and in short shorts. I mean, and it's a guy who's a fellow tribes member, and he's with Pigeon John, just rapping and stuff. It's awesome.
I don't think I've ever seen this.
You've never seen the music video of Tapatio, David?
No, I
You're
haven't.
telling me through all the years that Thad never just played it on his TV?
I don't think so.
Really?
No, I don't.
Really? I'm very surprised. I mean, maybe there's a reason. Maybe because of the description I've given, he wouldn't show it to all the youngins in youth group, probably. So,
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah. It's not like it's risque or anything. It's fine. It's just like they're in a parking lot and they're washing cars as they're like doing the music video. It's great. It reminds me of the scene in Anchorman. We were watching it last night, and it reminds me of the scene where they're doing the fight with all the news stations in the back parking lot. It's just a back parking lot or alley or whatever, and like an underpass is in the background in LA or something. I don't know. So anyway, welcome to Snarp Fangle. It's glad to have you here. We got a packed show for you, but man, let me explain what we're gonna dive into. So, Snarp Fangle Podcast is a conversational podcast where we each bring a topic to the table of the congregation to you all listening right now, and we each bring a topic and we discuss it and just have a wonderful back and forth and see where the conversation goes. All right, David. This week I want to talk about time travel. So let me give you a little bit of thing. I think we can look at time travel in many different ways. I think some of the ways I've been pondering about it recently has actually been biblically thinking in the way of time travel and how the Lord works in time travel. But I mean, the first thing I think of time travel is like Back to the Future and maybe Doctor Who. I mean, there's a great piece of like artwork and memes where those cross over, and I love that as well. There's also a great epic rap battle of Doc Brown versus the Doctor, but we won't get into that. But anyway, time travel, it's super interesting. And then I found this, actually found this talk online called Time Travel in the Bible by Dr. Gene Kim from UC Berkeley. And it's actually from this like YouTube channel called Real Bible Believers. And let me tell you, I haven't gotten past the first 30 minutes because I keep starting it and having to redo it. And it's just fascinating. He dives into like how the Bible, how God is omnipresent, obviously, omnipotence, we all know that, but also just the fact that when the Bible is referring to different things, he's also talking about when the Bible refers to the Jewish people in terms of like the tribulation and stuff like that, when the Bible refers to the church, especially when you dive into Revelation and when you dive into Hebrews. And that's just one of the many different points he makes in the video. Again, it's called Time Travel in the Bible. You can just look it up. Dr. Gene Kim, Genekim. I don't know if I agree with everything he says, but I got to say it's really interesting. And it seems like their YouTube channel has a lot of interesting talks from that guy in particularly. And, he also dives into the post-tribbers, David.
Oh, yeah.
The post-tribbers and, you know how people are going to be around for the tribulation and all that, and people who think that way. And again, it's just fascinating for me to think the concept of that, and also the concept of just time travel in general, because there's also time perception as well as just the flow of time and and aging and how time slows or speeds up depending on what's going around us. I mean, my mom has a great saying where growing up she would say, well, you have to have fun, but you got to know how. But the one I really want to tell you about is the phrase where she said that, well, it's fun to have fun, but you got to know how. And crap, I just mixed it. Never mind. So anyway, I thought that, never mind, man, I'm having a real big brain fart. I'm sorry, I'm tired. But the show must go on, David. We must record. We have not recorded in so long, David. And I'm getting to the point where I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I don't know if I would record another episode of Snarp Fangle.
Yeah, I mean, there's no two ways to say it. This episode is going to be a shit show for sure. But, it's really, I did say that I had found the answer to the eternal question of whether a hot dog is a sandwich.
What?
But it's out there.
Okay.
So it's out there.
What is it?
I'll show you this meme that I found on the internet, and it's so great. I'll describe it for our audience, and then I'll show it to you.
Well, I'll just put it on the YouTube post.
But
if you want to describe it, go for it.
Yeah, so it's a diagram it's titled "The Cubic Rule of Food Identification," and it has some little cubicle diagrams of what different foods are based on how they fit in this cube pattern.
Wait, what? Sushi's all around? Oh, sushi wraps around.
Exactly.
Things. Oh.
So,
but what's the salad? The salad's nothing in it.
So salad has no wrapping.
Oh, these are things that are wrapped.
Toast or bread.
It's bottom, yeah.
Yeah. Toast has just the bottom bread. A sandwich has bottom bread and top bread. A taco is side to bottom, side, and
side.
Middle, side, yes.
Yeah.
And the sushi is all around with open ends. Quiche is all around with an open top and a closed bottom. Calzone is closed all around, and a cake is layered vertically.
Okay, interesting.
So according to this metric here, hot dogs aren't sandwiches, they're tacos.
So wait a second. What's the sushi one look like? Can you show me again? Okay, so the sushi one has everything around it, but in the middle, well, that's sushi. But what about things that are closed all the way around it? Is that listed there?
Yeah, that's a calzone.
Okay, so calzone. So an egg roll, David,
is a calzone.
Okay, so
a burrito is also a calzone.
Well, it's also weird because it depends on what part of the world you're in too. An egg roll could be a calzone, could be an egg roll, David.
Yeah.
And what else were we talking about? A calzone, egg roll, burrito. A burrito can also be like a
burrito roll. Could be sushi if the ends are open.
That's the thing, David. A burrito, if the ends are open, is not a burrito.
Exactly.
It's a taco. Or a sushi.
But it's not a taco.
Sushi.
It's sushi.
It's sushi. Yes.
Yes. And then I love whoever originally created this meme. I love their comment on it. It's Diogenes running up to Plato holding a Big Mac. Behold, a cake.
Hey, that's not a bad cake. It's a pretty tasty cake.
Because, it's got the 3 layers.
It's got the 3 layers. Okay, so this is just talking about like bread and what's wrapped in bread.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So a burger. Yeah, it makes sense. A Big Mac could be a cake. I could see that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A regular burger is a sandwich.
Since we're
a Big Mac is a cake.
Did you say pancake? What?
I said a regular burger is a sandwich, but a Big Mac is a cake.
And so pancakes are toast, is what you're telling me.
And essentially, yes.
Interesting. And crepes and waffles. Okay. All right. That makes sense now. You know what? As hilarious as that meme is, it makes a lot of sense to me.
It does. It really...
It makes it puts it in perspective.
Exactly.
Kind of like time travel, you know? Okay, before we get going on the topics, I forgot to say that there was something I was going to tell you, and I haven't told you yet, that happened at work, I think you had something too, but let me go first. I was at work. We were working. It's really funny. It's oh god. Anyway, so there's my coworker Kobe, and he he was so bored because we work in a space where it's an open area and students come in and it's a tutoring center basically, and so. Basically, he was like, Jake, I'm so bored. And I'm like, well, here, let me put you to work. And so I sent him a thing on Canva. Be like, hey, here you go. And you're going to go work on this. He's like, oh, can you send me the login? I'm like, oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot about that. And I'm looking for him like, gosh, I cannot remember the code or the password or whatever. And then just out of nowhere, he states at me like loudly in front of like 6 other people in an educational environment, yeah, Jake, get dementia. I'm like, whoa, okay. And he immediately regretted it. He's like, I am so sorry that I did not mean it that anything that way. I just meant to be a joke. And like in front of like 6 or 7 people, like students, other tutors, and I'm like, dang, whoa, that escalated quickly. Like, geez. And I didn't even tell him that like I've had family members die of dementia. I didn't want to bring it up. I wanted to take it to the next level, David, but I held back, and I'm proud of myself. I didn't take it. I didn't make him feel bad, but I just yeah, Jake, get dementia. I was like, whoa, dang. So anyway, that's the funny thing that happened to me this last couple of weeks. So what was the one? Yeah, what was the one you brought up to me? What was the one you were talking about?
What was it?
Because you said, oh, yeah, something funny happened. I was going to tell you about it, but yeah, I'll just save it for the podcast.
Oh, what was it?
Welcome to Snarp Fangle, guys.
Oh, Lord. Oh, it was a funny news story that I heard.
Nude story?
No,
news story.
News
oh, okay.
Story.
Sorry about that. Ooh, man, it's been a week.
But,
being called,
yeah,
maybe I am getting dementia, dude. I don't know.
Gosh. It had nothing to do with time travel. I just thought it would be funny at some point to spring it on you just to get your like initial reaction, because I had to do a double take when I saw this.
The news?
So, an Oklahoma school has recently gotten national attention for holding a fundraiser where kids lick each other's feet.
I saw this. What is the messed up world we're living in, man? What the heck? Dude, and it's not just the one school. It's multiple schools in Oklahoma. Did you know
multiple schools?
It's multiple. You know what? I could be wrong on that. But I saw this on Twitter, and I'm like, what the F is going on in this world that we're living in? In America? Like, I would figure this would happen in some destitute town in Eastern Europe or something. Or maybe in London, maybe in London, because they're weird over there. Shout out to my other coworker, Sylvia. Sylvia. So, because she's from the UK. Oh, David, man. I think like we should start over. I don't know. Maybe we should just keep going. Let's just keep going.
Yeah,
this is the S show episode. Maybe we shouldn't even talk about what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, it's going to be awful either way.
It's going to be awful. Let's just go.
Yeah.
All right. So, speaking of licking toes.
Oh my gosh.
Dude, it's messed up. Like, don't look up the videos, but like, I really hope whoever's in charge of that gets arrested, because that's like... And David, is it clear that they were... is it clear that the toe thing was happening to other students? Or was it happening to teachers? Because that's a totally different issue.
From what I understand...
Because that's what I...
From what I understand, when the story first broke, people were saying that students were licking adults' feet.
Jesus. But
the school, in order to, avoid being caught in a controversy, clarified that no, it was merely students licking the feet of other students.
Oh, yes, that's much less worse. I mean, what do you think of us, heathens?
We're not perverts here.
We're not perverts here. Oh, my God. Oh, man. What? Dude, I saw that, and like the videos of the kids' faces are blurred, and I'm like, what the hell? Why is this on my timeline? Like, good googly moogly. Like, God, I have no words. Like, it's just so unbelievably like messed up. Like, good Lord. Yeah, hopefully somebody gets put in prison. It's either the students or the teachers or all of them. Like, shut the school down. Sodom and Gomorrah, that school. Get out of here. We don't need it.
At a bare minimum,
fire rain down from heaven. Like, that's what I want. Like, send Lot, get him out of there, and just don't turn back.
I mean, the bare minimum response should be the entire administration of that school should be fired.
Yes, as well as if you turn away from the fire, you're not going to turn to salt or pillar of salt. You're going to turn to a pillar of perspiration in between your toes, and then you just fall down. That's what's going to happen. Like, oh my God. I think at this point, David, we should just dive into all the messed up, like, anyway. Oh my God. Oh man.
Unfortunately, I feel like not only is nobody going to be fired over this, nobody's going to be charged with a crime over this. It's just going to be quietly swept under the rug.
This reminds me of that movie. You ever watched the movie Bad Education with Hugh Jackman?
No.
It's a really great movie. I think it's on HBO or something, but it's called Bad Education. It's got Hugh Jackman, Ray Ramona, or what's the guy who plays?
Ray Romano?
Yeah, Ray Romano's in it, and a few others, but like it's about how this school board was like spending a ton of money and grant money from the state, and they never reported the spending of it all. So they would, and this was, I think, in the 80s or 90s. This is based on a true story. And like Hugh Jackman's like the principal or the superintendent, and Ray Romano's one of the teachers or something like that, or on the board. And it's like really interesting how they're like doing this, and people are like, what's going on here? Why are they spending all this money? And it's not getting reported at all. And you find out that like Hugh Jackman is like got some seedy stuff going on in his life. And it's like fascinating movie that's very dark, but it goes to show that, I mean, man, like get your kids out of that school, man. And like, just make sure, and like who's teaching these kids? Like, geez, do we remember the name of the school at all? Like, do you remember at all?
No.
It was in Oklahoma. It was a high school.
It was in Oklahoma, and that is all that I heard. I don't remember ever hearing the name of the school.
Pillar of salt, man. Rain fire from heaven down on them. Dang. Speaking of heaven, let's talk about time travel. So as I've like talked before, like, yes, God is omnipotent and omnipresent. And I think that's the main thing that I find interesting is that because there are points in the Bible where, like, I think it's King Hezekiah and with the prophet Isaiah, where he wants to see I think it's in Isaiah, where the King Hezekiah says, oh, well, what about the sundial and the flow of time and the way the day goes? Doesn't he ask God to turn, like, to not have man, I'm doing a terrible thing. Anyway, I'm not, let me start over. No, let's just keep going. David, we got to keep going. We must record. Oh, man, what have I done? Anyway, there's a story in the Bible where King Hezekiah, with the prophet Isaiah, I believe, and God actually pauses the time of day for a moment and then turns it back as well for just a short period of time. It was like a miracle. But what it shows us in that happening is that, God created time. And if time travel is a thing, like, man, that'd be like, it just fascinates me, that kind of concept, as well as if there's a way scientifically to go backward in time, because it feels like going forward from what I've done, from the reading I've done, is that in the theory of relativity and the theory of a lot of different study on time and the flow of it, and the way that our brains process it and we age, it seems like going forward would be actually easier theoretically than going backward. The reason of that, I don't remember. Well, bear with me, but
it's interesting that you bring that up, because actually, according to the way physics work, we're actually traveling forward in time by little tiny bits all the time. And by traveling forward in time, I mean we're actually accelerating the flow of time forward, and it has to do with motion. So Now, this is first described in Einstein's theory of relativity, that as an object moves closer and closer towards the speed of light, time for that object relative to everything around it slows down.
Yeah. Around the object or around the planet, or
it's an object that is, as an object, travels closer and closer to the speed of light. Time for that object slows down.
Interesting. Huh.
So the practical effect of this is that if you, and this has actually been tested, if you send a clock on board a rocket, blast it off into space, going very fast, because a rocket blasting off into space is about the fastest vehicle or mode of transportation that we can achieve as a species technologically. You put a clock on a rocket, you send it into space, bring it back down. What you're going to find is that clock is now a little behind clocks on Earth.
Interesting.
So essentially, what has happened is that clock and that rocket have traveled into the future by an ever so minute amount. Because if you had an astronaut on board that rocket, that astronaut would experience the flow of time normally from their perspective. Like, say the whole journey took an hour. And I mean, obviously, a journey from Earth to space and back is probably going to take more than an hour. But for simplicity's sake, we'll say it took an hour. And there was a clock, and it's the best clock you can imagine. Like, better than an atomic clock. There's no possible way that this clock could ever go out of time.
Huh, okay. Like a Rolex.
That just never goes out of fashion.
That just never goes out of fashion.
So anyway, the astronaut undertaking this journey would experience time for themselves normally. They would experience an hour. The clock on board the rocket would show that an hour had passed. But if you compared that to another one of these super amazing clocks that even better than an atomic clock that never goes out of time, that had stayed earthbound the entire time, that earthbound clock would be ahead of the spacefaring clock. And yet, people on Earth who were not in that rocket, who did not undertake that journey, they would also experience time normally. But the practical effect of this is that essentially this astronaut would have traveled into the future by a tiny, minuscule amount. Now, if you extrapolate this to its logical conclusion, you start inventing, sci-fi technology that can cause us to go a much more significant fraction of the speed of light. If I remember correctly, I remember reading a book that said that if we ever invented fusion-powered spacecraft, so essentially like the impulse engines of a ship on Star Trek, the fastest that would get us would be like a few percent of the speed of light. Not very fast at all, by any stretch of the imagination. But the interesting thing is this time slowing effect would have repercussions for anybody undertaking long interstellar journeys with using these spacecraft. So essentially, what would happen is you would go on a long interstellar journey that took, say you went on a long interstellar journey that took a number of light years. So like the amount of distance that it takes light to travel in a year. Like let's say you went to Alpha Centauri, the closest star. So at light speed, that would take you 4 years to get there. It would take a really, really long time to get there.
Yeah, because Alpha Centauri is it's the closest one, but it's still way out there.
Yeah. So at a fraction of the speed of light, it would take a lot longer. So say you were to undertake this journey, say you were cryogenically frozen or something so that you would be preserved for however many long years that it took you to get there. So the interesting thing is for you...
Me?
If you're the one...
I'm not a time traveler.
If you're the one undertaking the journey, you go there, you come back. The amount of time that will have passed locally on Earth from the perspective of people who have been on Earth will have been much greater than the amount of time that has passed for you personally on the journey. So you would have essentially be traveling years into the future simply by going really, really fast. And what's interesting is you've seen Ender's Game, right?
Yeah.
So there's a little known sequel to Ender's Game, which most people... Well,
there's 5 books, right?
Well, only one's a sequel.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah. The rest is just the prequel stuff.
There's prequel stuff. There's Bean's Game, which is the same story told from the Bean's perspective.
Gotcha.
But Ender's Game 2 is the actual sequel. And
is it called Ender Games 2?
I believe it's called Ender's Game 2.
Really? I thought it was like something else or whatnot. Huh.
I read it a long time ago, so I don't remember exactly what it's called. But yeah, it is a true sequel to Ender's Game. So it follows an adult Ender. And have you read the book?
I've read the book, yeah. It's been a while, but I've read it, yeah.
So you know at the end, spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert, guys, for Ender's Game. Get out of here.
At the end, the Earth's government kind of pulls the old switcheroo on him because the public outcry against, the genocide of the bug aliens, of the buggers or whatever they were called, becomes so great, and the government's like, oh, we need something we need a scapegoat to placate these people, so they essentially offer up Ender as a scapegoat. They're like, the evil Ender, he committed this horrible genocide. So essentially they write into the history books that Ender, for future generations to learn, that Ender was this horrible war criminal who, because of his callous evil, decided to commit genocide against these buggers instead of the actual story where he was just an unwitting pawn in their game. So the book ends so Ender's Game ends like that.
Yeah.
And so you have Ender's Game 2, Ender is now an adult and he's a pariah, but he is able to escape. He's able to escape the wrath of those around him by utilizing this principle. So in this book, there's all these big freighter ships that travel between nearby stars, and they travel at a fraction of the speed of light, and it takes years and years for the journey to be completed. There's no hyperdrive or anything in this universe. So all travel is strictly sublight.
Oh, interesting.
But there is limited interstellar travel nonetheless. And Ender becomes essentially kind of like a roving ambassador. Like he's he resolves disputes for people, just like anyone who calls, he comes and sort of acts as like an arbiter between two parties. And so he makes all these multiple interstellar journeys. And because he's made so many more of these journeys than anybody else, because of the way he lives and what he does, is he's way farther in the future than would be possible given his actual lifespan. So him as a fully grown adult, he's like hundreds of years in the future relative to everybody else. So he's hearing about, so everybody on Earth has grown up hearing about how hundreds of years ago there was this evil ender who killed all these innocent aliens. But because he's living in that time period and not, because he's actually living in that time period, nobody knows that he's Ender.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
So everybody still thinks that Ender is evil, but because he's managed to utilize this effect of relativity to essentially outlive everyone else, like nobody specifically knows that he is actually, who meets him knows that he is actually Ender.
Yeah, that's fascinating because basically he's not at a different point in time, is he? Or is he?
Well, he is.
He is.
Because
okay.
he's a normal, I can't remember how
yeah.
old he is, but he's like a normal, fully grown human adult. I don't remember how old he is, but let's say he's 30 years old.
Yeah.
So for him, from his perspective, he's lived those 30 or 40 or however old he actually is in the novel. He's lived those years, but because he's spent most of those years on these long interstellar flights, where he is, that 30 years that he's lived is like 400 or 500 years for everybody else who hasn't lived their whole lives on interstellar flights.
Yeah.
So he's in the future, essentially.
Yeah, he's in the future, yeah.
Even though, to his perspective, he's only lived like 30 or 40, however long, but he is, relative to everybody else, in the future.
Man, that reminds me of, because you've seen Interstellar as well, right?
I believe I have, yes.
Yeah, the Christopher Nolan movie. And in that, it's the dad. He's traveling so far. I think it's because he's traveling near the black hole or near the point in the universe where time is, and also it's the speed of light, the time travel and all that stuff. Because of that, his daughter on Earth grows up and becomes an adult and has to deal with the goings on Earth. And then, as you watch the movie, it gets more complicated. But in that, it's really cool because, it's him and he's still the same age. And that whole movie is such a great exploration of time travel and the concept of that. And it's all based on real science. And because the director got people in there and the writers did that who were actual scientists of black holes, of time travel, of interstellar travel, and how it would work theoretically. And that's what it's based off of. And just to think of that and to think of space travel in general causing that makes me, I think there's plenty of things in science fiction that are cool, but to actually look at the application of interstellar travel and the effects of it on the human body is just, God, it's so fascinating because how would your organs act? Because time is a thing that is flowing and you can't really stop aging at all. So except for the frozen Disney's head, in Disneyland, of course. But with that saying, except for him, everybody else still ages. So I think that, I don't know, it boggles my mind just looking up things about time travel and not just science, not fiction, but actual science about this. Because, man, thinking about Ender's Game and the different ways that could go and also Interstellar, it just makes me think on Earth, is it possible? I mean, most likely not. It has to do with speed and movement and as well. But it also makes you think what about people who are pilots for a living? will they will they age slower, just by minuscule amounts in their life? I mean, the Earth has fluctuated in the speed of its rotation too throughout the years. And in fact, where we've had to add leap seconds to the UTC, the universal clock.
To be fair, though, the time dilation effects that have been observed have been minuscule.
Yeah, very minuscule.
Like minuscule
because we're
beyond
talking
minuscule.
about light, the speed of light.
Yeah.
And it's so minuscule.
Like minuscule beyond minuscule. Like even if someone spent their entire lives going up and down in space in rockets, like the end result, they wouldn't in any way perceptibly be in the future.
Yeah.
The effects would only become noticeable at significant fractions of the speed of light, which are currently not technologically possible.
And that's all we know as of right now. But in the future, I think it could be, the potential for the technology. I mean, imagine, David, if we get the technology to build that high-speed train, and I'm not talking just 700 miles an hour. I'm talking 1,500 miles an hour. It's a train that goes around the whole world. Because there's been talks of that technology for decades, or the last couple decades. But what if we do get that, and say somebody who's a kid now, or say when that's built, grows up traveling on it at some point and using it frequently as an adult, as a career? Man, it's going to be cool to do analysis on that, even though it'll probably never be done. But man, it's cool to wonder, man. It's so cool. And also time dilation, because correct me if I'm wrong. Apologies, I'm very tired. But time dilation has to do with the movement of an individual or object, or the effect of...
In this specific effect, yes. So this is a function of Einstein's theory of relativity. Forgive me, I can't remember if it was general relativity or special relativity, but
the worst.
It's one of those things.
It's one of them.
Trust me.
Trust him.
Trust me.
Trust him. Trust us. You will trust him.
So one of the functions of relativity is that as an object moves at a speed closer and closer to the speed of light, time for them relative to the world around them slows down.
Mm-hmm. And there's also the law of thermodynamics too.
Well, there's
how that
more
applies
than one
to
law of
there's more. Yeah, there's more than one, but or the laws, I should say, of thermodynamics, and how that applies to us in our human bodies as well.
Yeah,
Man.
That's actually so. The real hurdle in having high speed space travel, where we're actually traveling at a significant fraction of the speed of light, is one, we have to invent the technology to actually do it. So that's the main hurdle. But beyond that, the most significant hurdle is actually the effect of that on the human body.
Mm-hmm.
Because Star Trek has
super cool.
Star Trek has what is called inertial dampeners to sort of explain everything away.
Yeah,
because
that ain't a thing right now. And
because if say just a spacecraft in Star Trek traveling from a stop to full impulse in any reasonable amount of time, as in the acceleration is something they can feel and not an acceleration that's so slow and gradual you can't feel it, which wouldn't be useful to anyone. But if it's an actual acceleration that would be useful in terms of traveling that fast, going from a full stop to full impulse would kill any crew on board instantaneously.
Anything. Yeah. I mean, you're going so fast and years at the time that you're dead.
So but it's not the speed.
No,
it's the acceleration.
Yeah,
So you could,
if feasibly, you could
slowly get up to that speed.
Yeah,
it wouldn't cause any problems. But But by accelerating that slowly,
by doing light
it would-
speed,
or-
like jump, you know.
it's not
that's the
even
thing.
it's not even light speed. I'm just talking about impulse. If Star
Yeah.
Trek impulse engines were to be a thing, and you were to travel from full stop to full impulse, the crew would not survive.
No,
And
absolutely
the
not.
crew would not survive the acceleration. And accelerating at a rate which the crew would survive would undo all the benefits of being able to travel that fast in the first place.
You're telling me that Doc Brown's dead, David? And his DeLorean was just laying in the lands of the Greece omnipotent tower? He's
What's
just
interesting
dead?
though is Doc Brown, if Back to the Future could be said to be based on any real science at all, if it could be said,
If it could, yeah.
Doc Brown's time traveling DeLorean would not work on the principles of achieving light, a significant portion of light speed, but would work on something more akin to Star Trek's warp drive, where you warping the space-time continuum around you in order to achieve the distribution of whatever distribution of matter and energy that you desire. See, that's actually the really interesting thing is nothing could ever travel faster than the speed of light. But because of the magic of relativity, you could be traveling slower than the speed of light locally, but relative to a stationary observer, you could actually be traveling faster than the speed of light from their perspective. And the whole reason that is possible is because of another effect of relativity, that is the dilation of the space-time continuum.
You know what comes to my mind as you're explaining this to me is the thought of technology that is created in our own real world, but then has to be or is destroyed because of the consequences it could bring. Like, I could imagine, because there's been articles I've read and I've heard of people do this where they create a way to get rid of cancer in a very fast and efficient way. And that's and one of them was created, I believe, from a teenager who was in who was in a very like high affluent college in the United States.
Let me guess, the cancer industrial complex.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
that.
Yeah, and that's one aspect of this is that somebody creates a really good drug or cure or solution to a modern ailment. But because of the, like you said, the complex that is our big pharma thing in the United States and the world, even the fact that exists, they do. And there's been things that I've seen where like this thing is discovered and then never mentioned again, or it's only like available to this like person if you talk to them. And I'm not saying it's available like you can go to them and get treated, but I'm saying the technology and the concept is there. But usually it's either bought out or purchased or some method of copyright, and then whatever company gets rid of it, because selling people the cure is not profitable. Selling them the medicine is to fight your ailment. But I'm talking about more like technology too. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if like saying, some scientific lab in the United States, secret, behind the scenes of government stuff, Area 51 kind of thing. I mean, we've heard stories of aliens, of course, but dude, imagine if there is more possibly like sort of technology created in those labs, in those secret parts, in the unknowns of history, of our own country even, where it's created, or maybe in another entirely different country where it's created, it's discovered. And because it's so unalienably powerful, it is just getting rid of, because it's like, well, you know what? If we do invent this, then it's everything's going to go away. Like, if we create time travel, if we might find a way to do it, I wouldn't be surprised if like somebody has done that and then just completely destroyed the research, or destroyed or created way avenues of going around it or distracting people from discovering it. Because there's great things that people have discovered, like real, I mean, I don't have a specific example, but like I'm sure it's fun to speculate that there is probably a lot of things like the cancer thing that are discovered that will work, but it's just either it's not profitable or it's too dangerous to keep around.
You know what? There is actually one example of that I know about.
Yeah.
That's real.
Really?
So
it's not AI, is it?
No. That cat's already out
That's
of the bag.
already, yeah, it's over, man.
So did you know that the technology exists to create synthetic gasoline?
Really?
Yes, the technology exists to synthesize gasoline in a lab. The problem is that this sort of thing, as great of a solution as it would be for the short term, for the scarcity of fossil fuels and environmental impacts and all that, it'd be a great solution because it would require no new infrastructure. It simply would require research and development to get this technology to a place where it's cost effective enough to mass produce. And interestingly enough, the process is carbon neutral.
Really? Okay.
So
well, that makes sense.
Any carbon, the process actually captures carbon from the air, and the carbon that is released upon burning this synthetic fuel is simply adding back the carbon that was captured from the air.
So the synthetic gasoline is made, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when it's burned up, it's captured again?
No.
The
carbon is captured
Mm-hmm.
in the process of making this synthetic gasoline.
Okay.
And then when the carbon is once again released, because of burning the fuel, there's no net increase of carbon in the atmosphere. Because what was released in the atmosphere by burning the fuel had already been taken out of the atmosphere by the process of creating that fuel.
Okay.
So it's not gonna necessarily.
It's not gonna add it.
It's not gonna add it, and it's not gonna take away. It's just neutral. So it seems like a pretty attractive solution, at least for what the infrastructure and technology that we have now. The issue is, how do we get this cost effective enough to mass produce? The unfortunate thing is, because the green industry, not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but there's all sorts of government grants.
There's all sorts of also, like we've said with Big Pharma, there's other interests too that want to get rid of stuff like
so
this.
Continue. There's all sorts of government grants. There's all sorts of money available, tax breaks, you name it, for companies that invest in what are considered green technology or renewable energy, like solar and wind and whatnot. So investing in creating synthetic gasoline doesn't give you any of those perks.
No.
So no company's investing in it.
Yeah.
So all companies continue to invest in wind energy and electric cars and stuff like that, simply because they can make more money doing it because the government pay them to do it.
And here's the thing with the whole electric car thing is there are so many electric car chargers around here, right? And electric cars, Teslas, blah, blah, blah. But the process of charging your car, like the amount of power it takes to charge it, is like, isn't it, what was the number? It was like something like enough kilowattage to like power a home for a year or something like that every time you charge your car.
I don't remember how much, but it's
a lot.
It's a surprisingly large number.
Lot. And to produce that kind of power and to get it from the power grid, there is so much that has to go into the power grid. And that's why, like, even, dams and rivers aren't enough. Coal mines, you're going to have to go to coal or something to get that amount of power, or preferably nuclear if we can, to continue that kind of thing. And I know nuclear is like a big thing where it's like very dangerous to use that word. But thorium is one aspect of creating a nuclear power plant where there's extremely little waste, because that's the big thing. You have to do something with the waste. At the thorium power plants, if you can look this up in China, they put in a ton of them in the last decade, where it's nuclear. It's in technically a nuclear power plant, but the waste that comes from those power plants can fit into a gallon-sized jar, basically, after 50 years. That's how much waste they can produce. And the technology has gotten to the point where you're not going to get a meltdown, or it's very, very minuscule to the point of, 0.000 whatever, that it's going to, you're going to have a meltdown or something. It's not like that at all. But investing that kind of technology like China has, they kind of need it to provide power to all those people. But us in the United States, we could totally use that too. And that's why I think we should do more nuclear stuff as well. Yeah, go get the oil from in the Arctic. There's plenty out there. I'm sure there's plenty also in the earth in general. I think, and I believe this, that God has provided us enough energy and things on this earth to sustain ourselves. I don't know how that evolves into like the end times or whatever, but I believe there's enough. And I believe also like God created the earth in a way to really provide us with, a lot of cures for elements, like we've said, and the such and such. But it's man, I think, that gets in the way of a lot of that. But again, I think it's just, and this all, I think, culminates back to the development of technology, David, because back in the space race happening in the 50s and the 60s and et cetera, so much of that technology has helped build up to today. And I feel like, and I'm no scientist, but I feel like we're getting to the end of the benefits of that time. And it's time to do another like space race type industry boom again. We need to get back into space, because NASA, a lot of the technology that was invested and created during that time, you have it in the iPhone, you have it in a lot of things of today. A lot of those building blocks were started back then that we're reaping now. But what are we going to reap further in the future? There is so much we have to do to invest. And I think investing in NASA is a very important thing, or some entity as part of the government to invest in this kind of thing, to kind of, it's a lot of people see it as wasting money. But when you look at it, it is investing in your future, because it's discovering new things, getting new minds to think in different ways, and to invest in, like, use energy as an example, invest a new way to make synthetic gasoline or something like that. I think that the investment of technology today will pave the path. Not for time travel, but for interstellar travel. And I think we're going to get there, maybe not in our lifetime, but if we start now, we might be able to see a glimpse into the future of that by the time we're a bunch of old guys saying that Halo 3 is the best Halo in the retirement home, At least that's how I'm going to be. I don't know about you, David. And I'm not going to be in no retirement home, but
I already feel grumpy and old. And I already feel like I yell at the clouds, so I don't even want to imagine what I'll be like.
It's only going to get better from here, David. But speaking of time travel, like, if you had the ability, David, what would you do with the time machine? Like, what would you do? If you had Bill and Ted's thing, what would you do with it? Or the DeLorean or whatever. What would you do with that thing? And what would you visit, take advantage of? Will you go to the future, the past? Will you stay here? Will you destroy it? What would you do with a time travel
First thing
machine?
I would do if I had the capacity to travel back in time is I'm going back to see Jesus in the flesh. I want to see him walk with my own eyes. I want to hear his words with my own ears. So yeah, if I get time travel, that's the first thing I'm doing. Once I've had my fill of that, I mean, honestly, the possibilities are endless.
Like where?
I mean, the
like
future,
that's
the
your
past.
first stop. What's your second stop?
Second stop. Oh, that's hard.
Are you going to, because I wouldn't even touch the future, honestly. I would kind of just mess around in the past, honestly.
I think my curiosity about the distant future would compel me to travel there, because, professor in H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, you know, just like the urge to see what sort of fantastical, wild, beyond my imagination kind of thing society has evolved into, I think would overtake me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because like as we're recording this, the second part of the Dune like trilogy or whatever has come out, and I got to go see it. And it's really interesting because in the book, or at least in the movie, I should say, I don't know about the book, I need to read it, but in the movie they state it's like 10,000 whatever years. And I think that's just super intriguing to think that far in the future, because also I think in the book they talk about AI in a way, and how AI, they had to get rid of AI, and there was a war with AI at one point in Dune, like the universe, and they got rid of it. And they kept it the way of the AI, they kept it, but it's through people who are born. So they're born with a high intellect and they're used for a certain purpose, like an advisor or a assistant or something like that. Like that's how that universe works. But the year 10,000 AD, David, like the temptation I think would be too high. But so your second step would be in the future is what you're saying. Okay. Well, I think I know what I'm going to do with the time traveling machine. I'm going to go to the future, maybe 700 years. I think I have enough faith in humanity that we probably won't be there, but I will say maybe there's a chance we'll be there. So I'll go there anyway. Maybe I'll find a space marine of some kind, and I'm going to probably grab a baker of that time period. Good old Baker, you know, I'm going to grab him, be like, hey, what's up? I'm from 2024. He's like, holy crap. What are you wearing? Exactly. You want to hop in this time machine? You're from the past. That's cool. So we're going to grab a baker, right? And he's going to hop in my time machine. Then we're going to go back in time from there. We're going to go to the 1990s and we're going to grab Prince and we're going to say, yo, Prince, this might affect a lot of what's happening with you and your future career. But would you possibly take some time while you're recording in the studio to just take 5 minutes of this time period and go with us? And if he says yes, then that's great. My second plan is to grab Eminem before he got big, you know, while in the Detroit trailer park. But Prince is my first pick. So we're going to grab Prince. And then we're going to go back, David. We're going to go back to Theodore Roosevelt and we're going to grab Teddy, man. And I'm going to grab him and it's going to be awesome. He's going to be like, what the hell is this? And you're like, trust me, Teddy, trust me. We're going to go back even further after that. We're going to go grab good old Ben Franklin, David. Oh man. He's in France, chilling in a bathtub with a bunch of French babes, and we're just going to walk in on them, and we're going to be like, yo, Ben, we're from the future. Holy crap. You are from the future. You don't need these broads. Hop in. We get him in clothes, and then he hops in. So then we go back further, David, and we're grabbing our homeboy, Jesus. Or maybe John. I'll take John. Maybe John. Maybe the Sons of Thunder if I can. Maybe Jesus. I feel like Jesus would be one of those people who'd be like, you know what? I knew this was going to happen. My father knew this was probably going to happen. So you know what? Whether this is written or not, or we have this written or not, maybe it's part of the plan. You know what? I'm just going to trust my father and I'm going to go with you. He hops into the time machine.
Oh, yeah.
And then we're going to go back we're going to go back forward, right? We're going to go back forward, David. And we're going to stop in sometime in feudal Japan, and we're gonna grab a wonderful samurai figure, and we're gonna have one of these fellow members to talk to the samurai, because I didn't really think this through. So somehow the samurai is gonna get in the time machine with us. Okay, so we're pretty much maxed out. I have 1, 2, got Teddy in there, Ben. I don't want to grab George. He's too important.
You're going to grab Jesus, but George is too important.
George Washington's too important. Jesus understands, David. He understands like the flow of things, how work that way, you know. He understands it. So anyway, we got all these people, right? We're going to go forward again to whenever the aliens invade, David, we're going to go, and they're not invading Earth. They're invading Mars. So we're going to go to Mars when they're invading Mars, because Mars, David, it's the last line of defense. And so I'm going to take Jesus, I'm going to take Prince, I'm going to take Ben Franklin, Teddy, and Samurai. I can't remember who else I picked up. Who else did I pick up? I think that's it. The guy from the baker. The baker, yes. So the baker is very important in this, David. He's going to go ahead and he's going to make all the food. Prince is going to make our battle cry. Jesus is going to, what could go wrong? You're going to be with Jesus. You're going to be safe. So that's my insurance, Jesus. Then Ben Franklin grabs a hold of technology, and then we charge in the battle and fight the bugs on Mars.
Oh my God.
And the samurai is going to have a mech he's in. I'm going to be there with hopefully from a safe distance from a copter of some kind. And we're just going to murk all these things like Starship Troopers. That's my plan if I have time travel.
Oh, all right then.
So anyway, that's what I would do.
That sounds like something you've put a lot of thought into.
Nope, I just came up with it on the spot.
Oh, wow. My goodness. So,
yeah, I think, and also Jesus, man, if you have Jesus with you, you're fine. It's going to be good. You might lead Ben Franklin to Christ. If you literally have Christ with you, Teddy's going to be like, I knew it all along. Ha ha. Bully, and Prince is going to be like, I knew you. You know what? You might have saved Prince, David. I might have just saved his life.
Maybe.
And that baker, the future baker, man, imagine the technology, David. The reason why I wanted him, the baker in the future, David, is because, and I have put a lot of thought in there's going to be so much advancements in pastry technology, David. I want him to make the best freaking cake and pie. I want to see what the pie technology looks like in 2700, man. It's going to be fire. Oh man, imagine the taste and also they probably made it to hopefully. I don't know if people are this smart. Maybe I'm going to the future and it's a baker from equivalent to 20 AD because civilization broke down in the 2041 or whatever. And then this is how far humanity's gotten. It kind of reset. So maybe it could be that. So I might be kind of screwed here if I don't get a future baker, but I need a future baker. That's the first step because we need good food. Good future food.
That's true.
But the problem, David, I think, with doing all this is what if I accidentally Jesus is no issue. What if I accidentally give Ben Franklin the flu? What if that happens, dude? Now, of course, Jesus is our insurance, so he can heal him. And, our faith in Christ is there, so that's cool. And we could probably have the baker help us somehow. But, if you do go back in time, there is an issue with bringing disease back or people who aren't humanly savvy with their immune system,
Yeah.
So that's an issue.
Well, the interesting thing is there's a lot of discussion on the ramifications of time travel. There's been a lot of debate about what exactly it would look like. What are the dangers of changing the past or changing the future, blah, 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 blah. One school of thought is rather intriguing that states that any changes in the past that will have been made by some time travel in the future will have already been made.
Exactly.
So whatever a time traveler does from the future, mucking about, say, in our time, whatever ramifications that has, that will not be experienced by us as a change in the timeline.
Yeah.
It'll just simply be what already happened.
Exactly. So that's why the theory in 2016, that was the theory, or that's the theory, current theory, that in 2016, what's that thing called? That big machine they got going on?
The Large Hadron Collider?
The Hadron Collider. What did that get reset or something in 2016 or?
It
blew up. No, it didn't blow up.
No,
it's still
no.
alive. It's going.
No.
But it affected the timeline, David. Something happened.
Yeah, yes,
I've
heard a million a million conspiracy theories about what the Large Hadron Collider did, which is interesting because I don't think the Large Hadron Collider was active in 2016. I actually looked this up.
I think it was. While you do that, you know what? Because in 2016, you know, a lot of the American popular culture will talk about things that happen in America, but there's probably other things that happen in the world that kind of shifted.
Oh yeah, no, never mind.
When was it made? Does it say?
It was originally constructed in, the first successful, firing of the Large Hadron Collider was in 2008.
Interesting. So 8 years before that.
But yeah, it was actually active in 2016.
And what happened to it? It like got reset or something? It stopped or something or
nothing remarkable. I mean, it was used. Tests were conducted, but
that's it.
Nothing remarkable happened.
Yeah, that's what they tell us. But we don't. We all know the real answer, David.
Well, let me look. Yeah, nothing. It was used for. So from the 2015 to 2018, which was its second operational run, it was used. And
CERN is the name. It's what does it stand for? Built by the European Organization for Nuclear Research, CERN.
Unless something juicy went on that they're not telling us about. Yeah, nothing particularly noteworthy came out of the Large Hadron Collider in 2016. But it's who knows? Who knows?
Yeah,
anything's possible.
Yeah. You know what? If time travel is created, David, and you do go back and see Jesus, if it's different in any way, like say in the Bible it says, "Oh, this person said that," and then Jesus responded. What if it was just something deep Jesus just said to somebody? Would it affect our faith at all? I wonder about that at times when discussing time travel.
What do you mean?
Well, like if I go back in time and Jesus is different or something than what was written, would that question my faith, or would I still hold strong? Do I still know where I'm going? There's that question of faith. I feel like if time travel becomes a thing, or not a thing, I should say, but if you experience that, what effect on faith would it have?
I guess.
And are we ready for it?
I guess that would depend on whether it had an effect at all. Because, there's no reason to suggest that the biblical record is necessarily false in any way. Like, we can always speculate, what if it was this way? What if it was this way? But we have no reason to believe that it's not the way it was written down necessarily. So it would actually take something happening to give us a reason to doubt before we could even answer that question, because we wouldn't know why we're doubting until something happened that gave us a reason to doubt. It's one of those things that you could speculate all you want, but it's like there's really no way to know what would happen. It's one of those things that the mind can't even comprehend. Just the idea of going back in time,
Baker,
and seeing things that we've just taken on faith our whole lives. Just the idea of that is mind-boggling.
Yeah. I'd love to be in the room and definitely in like the discussions of like the nuclear program and everything. I think that'd be fascinating. Even though that's like pretty well recorded in history, or somewhat well recorded that we know of. I think it'd be awesome to be a fly on the wall in those discussions. And like the what they could have come up with as well, because it might be jargon that goes over my head, but I think it'd be fun to experience that. And, time travel in general. But I feel like with time travel, when it comes to it, like in terms of the media side of things, like Ender's Game's a fun one. I like that a lot. I really like Interstellar and the way it handles it. I feel like it's a little... I'm always skeptical of movies that like say, oh, this is actually what scientists like have told us or theoretically could work. Because Because I'm like, I'm sure it's nothing like this, But I don't know. What are some of your favorite time traveling media? I mean, we have Back to the Future, of course. But
yeah, of course, Back to the Future is an all-time favorite of mine.
Have you ever been a fan of Doctor Who at all?
Now, Doctor Who is something I've never actually gotten into.
Okay.
Like, not at all.
Really? Okay.
Not even in the slightest. This has never been a thing. I mean, I have nothing against it. I've just never gotten into it. But what I really loved regarding time travel and media is Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Oh, yeah, dude.
All the different scenarios that come up regarding time travel in that series. Man, it's just so great.
It's so smart too. The writing, the performances, just that show, man. That's one show that like I think every single generation in quotes should watch at some point. Like, yes, OG Star Trek for sure, but especially Next Generation, because some of the writing in there, like you compare it to today's TV, David, and it's like night and day in a lot of cases. It was very smart and great commentary on a lot of different social issues, cultural stuff, especially, and also time travel as well. And I need to watch more Next Generation. Oh, there's a funny thing I heard about one time where I think it was on a podcast I was listening to. Yes, it was I think it was on Last Stand Media's, one of their podcasts, and there was a guy that wrote in and he said that he watched Star Trek Next Generation on his browser, but he wanted to get through it as fast as possible. So he installed a custom browser extension that let him watch it at 4 times speed with subtitles. And that's how he watched the entire Next Generation series.
I feel like it just wouldn't have the same impact.
Well, here's the thing about time travel, David, and time dilation is your mind will get accustomed to that kind of speed. Like I know people that will listen to audiobooks at like 3 times or 2 times speed and just that's what they do. And they can comprehend it that way. And your brain will catch up and learn to get used to that kind of speed. But man, imagine watching Star Trek Next Generation at 4 times speed.
I feel like it would just kind of destroy all the intentional dramatic pacing in that show. Like, it isn't even to do with anything whether you'd be able to comprehend the show or not.
Yeah.
It's just more like a book is one thing.
Yeah, a book's one thing.
Like you're
at your own pace.
Like your mind kind of fills a lot of that stuff in with a book.
Are you talking about an audiobook or actually reading?
Yeah, with an audiobook.
Oh, okay, gotcha. A regular book is at your own pace,
but if you're listening to an audiobook at 1.5 times speed or however fast people normally do that, like your mind your mind is the ultimate interpreter of the words that you're hearing.
Yeah.
So, but with a show, there's all these extra elements that come into it that are very intentionally done, very intentionally placed, and part of that is timing.
Yeah.
The timing, the pauses in scenes and dialogue is very important.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like watching a show at 4 times speed would just ruin all that.
Yeah. Like
it's like it wouldn't be worth it to watch.
People who do that are psychos. they're just crazy people that just somehow their brain can consume that much and that.
I mean, sure
they can consume it, but are they really getting everything out of it?
Yeah, what was the point of consuming it?
His words were, I wanted to get through it as fast as possible, so he watched it at 4 times speed.
At that point, he shouldn't have watched it at all. At that point, he shouldn't have watched it at all. There was no reason for him to.
I'm guessing it was also on Netflix, so like, I wonder if you could do that with anything on Netflix. Like can I watch all seasons of Supernatural that way? Like
if the idea of watching a show is reduced to consuming it.
Yeah.
Then what's the point of it?
Yeah, what's the point? Exactly. Like if I'm going to get through all of One Piece, David, I hear that's something you should probably enjoy, not something you should just, I got to get to the next episode. You have 1,000, buddy, to get through. You think you're really going to make it there? I don't think so. Because I think that also goes into something else where like, yeah, you can consume something and like, I got to get this done. I got to get this done. I got to go through this. I got to read the book. I got to binge this show, or I got to speed through this game or whatever. But like, are you really like enjoying it? Are you actually like there's one thing of like the intentionality of the creator and the way they want you to experience it. That's one thing. But also like another thing is people can consume however they want, but you also like want to get the most out of it as well. Or maybe just enjoy it at your own pace. Like, I don't really want to watch anything at 2x speed or listen to anything at 2x speed, except for maybe an audiobook. But even then, it's like, I kind of need slow it down for me. I need things to go a little slow. Oh, man. I feel like, yeah. I feel like it's a good place to stop on time travel. What do you think?
I mean,
we're getting into media again, like we usually do.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of sad. I'm satisfied with this topic.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry. One more thing.
Whoa.
One more thing is the idea of omnipotence and that God has that because time's not a thing that he has to deal with. He is always present.
Yeah.
And
he's out. The idea is that God is outside of time.
Outside of time.
So time is a thing that he can look into, step into, interact with, but he is not bound in time as we are. He is outside of time.
There's also verses that say 1,000 days to us is a day to God, or vice versa, or something like that.
You're thinking of 1,000 years.
1,000 years
is as a day
to
the Lord, and a day is as 1,000 years.
So it's like the idea is he is the I am. That's who he is. And he is the I am that I am. And so he is, like you said, outside of time. And it's, I think, really, I don't know, cathartic, I don't think is the right word, but what word am I looking for? Where like, it puts my mind at rest, putting it that way.
Yeah, because if he's outside of time and he's for us, if he fights our battles on our behalf, if he goes before us, if he is our everything and he's outside of time, then what do we have to fear from whatever woes time may bring us in this lifetime?
Especially when you think about multiple, like you think of generationally, you think of like his blessing over Israel. You even think of people that have, in their family, have had Christianity for a short amount of time, but also a long period of time. Like your grandfather or great-grandfather, whatever, was a Christian or believed in something else. And it's amazing and beautiful to see that you, or not necessarily you, but like you, whoever is listening to this, will, like, the eye of the Lord can be upon you. And as it was on as your father and his father before him. And I think it's beautiful to think about, as much as the jargon and the science and all that, and altogether at the end, it's foolishness to God because he knows the plan of everything and all that. So with that, I think we'll move on to our next topic, David. And what topic will that be?
Oh gosh, my mind is failing me now. I swear I did research. I swear.
I remembered everything but the topic. What were you doing research about?
So yeah, what I wanted to talk about a little bit was multiverse theory, the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. Ooh. And it's very fascinating, but I don't know if I can expound very well on that topic in the state of mind that I currently am.
Well, I think, here, let me help you a little bit, because I feel like, I'll start it off with this. I had an experience 2 or 3 years ago where I was dreaming. And so hear me out, okay? This connects to multiversal theory, okay? So I was sleeping at night. I was dreaming like I usually do. And it also fascinates me that some people don't dream, apparently. Did you know that? Apparently like 40,
I have heard that, yes.
48, 49, 50% of people don't dream.
50%? Are you sure it's
like
that high?
It's like half, I think.
Really?
I believe. I could be totally wrong. I would like to look it up. Can you look that up for me while I'm talking?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I was dreaming, and at the time I was working at a restaurant, and I remember that I was dreaming and I was crawling through a tunnel, kind of like that scene in Coraline where she's crawling through the tunnel into the like the parallel thing, parallel world where the other mother is and stuff. So it was kind of like a tunnel like that, but it was like, I'm traveling through, I'm crawling through it. I enter the other side, and I'm not a big Coraline fan or anything. Like this wasn't really entering my mind at the moment, but anyway, I was crawling through in this dream. I was crawling through this tunnel. I come out the other side. I'm on the other side of this bush, kind of like down the road where I was at the restaurant. And my car is parked there. And I'm like, well, how did I get? Well, I just came out of the bush through the tunnel. Like I knew in my mind that was the way. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I know I'm in that dream at this point. So whatever, I guess I'll just go along with the dream. So I go to work and then it zooms by and I'm like, oh, okay, I did my shift. That's cool. And so I'm consciously like outside of the store again. And I'm walking to my car and I'm like, oh, well, I'm not going to take my car home. I'm just going to crawl back into the tunnel. And so I go back into the tunnel. And as I'm crawling back through there, I come out the other side and I wake up. And I was so like, when I had that dream, I was so perplexed and confused. And I was speechless. I'm like, and it felt so real. Like those dreams where you're like, it's basically real life. And it was just a fascinating experience. But then something else happened. I had another dream later that same night. I think I'm remembering this correctly. It was the same night or maybe the night next where it was a repeat of another dream I had. And in that dream, it was a dream I had like in high school or something. And it was like a girl I really liked or whatever. And it was on like a beautiful sunny day. And like we kissed or whatever. Like it was a really wonderful dream in a teenager's mind. I'm like, oh, dude, that was really nice. Well, I got a kiss. Ooh, when does that happen? But anyway, it was weird that those two things happen at the same time. Cause I've had dreams where like I have them again and I can't explain that, but to have it again after that one kind of brought to my mind the possibility of your dreams and maybe chemicals in your brain or the things that your mind does when they're asleep. When you're asleep is actually not dreaming or creating something because it's bored. It's actually giving you images and pictures of another version of your life or another universe's version of your life. So this is Jake Metzger talking to you right now. But in the other universe, Jake Metzger ended up with that girl or whatever. And he still worked at that store. Like it was different. Like it was mostly the same, except maybe he had a relationship or whatever. Who knows what happened to it, but he still ended up working over there. And as I kept pondering this dream throughout the years, I've come to the conclusion that I don't know if I necessarily believe that multiverse or like another universe of time or a timeline or whatever is real or not. But I strongly feel that it is. And yes, dreams, and yes, who knows if this is just my brain playing tricks on me. It most likely is. But if you could bear with me the thought of possibly there's another David Reed out there in another universe, but that David dyed his hair blonde, and it's Blonde David or whatever. Or he made a choice of becoming the worship leader earlier than in this universe, or later than in this universe. Just minor changes, but they're different. Like say Jake went ahead and continued his career in school and became an IT professional somewhere versus staying at that school and having Kobe call him, get him dementia, like instead of that happening, he ended up doing that. It was still mostly the same. Like he still moved in here with, Steven and the such and Connor and all them and you eventually, but it was that job or maybe something different where like, cause I have, I definitely have brothers and sisters in heaven that, like when my parents were trying to have kids, there was like a miscarriage or whatnot. And I know for a fact I have a sibling out in heaven. And what in that universe did that sibling actually live? Did that sibling die the same way? Did he live longer? Were we friends? It's fun to think about. And I want to know have you had dreams like this David, or have an opinion on multiversal theory?
So definitely had dreams where I was living a different version of my life. This one's kind of humorous. But I'm glad that you mentioned dreams, because I totally forgot that I did actually want to bring dreams into the subject anyway.
Oh, DMT? Are we getting into it?
No. No, this is really quite funny. I dreamed once that I was...
have a dream. No, I'm sorry. Go continue.
I dreamed once that I was a transgender college student.
Really?
So in the dream, I was a younger version of me. So I'm in my 30s now, but in the dream, I was like 20, 21, something like that. I don't remember exactly.
Whoa.
And I was taking...
Was this emo David?
No.
I'm joking. I'm not.
The-
Because there was an emo Jake at one point. It was a week, but that was all.
So yeah. So I was like 19, 20, 21. I don't remember how old I was. But I was taking some classes at Butte College after high school, and this actually happened. I did actually take a little bit of college classes after I graduated high school. But so in the dream, I'm back there. I'm right back there. But instead of being like I was a trans woman.
Okay.
And it was very bizarre, because in the logic of the dream, like I just simply accepted it. Like in the logic of the dream, it was just like, this is the way I am, and there's no reason to think this is weird or not. Like if I woke up one morning and I was dressed in women's clothing and had a wig on,
you'd have a wig on while you're sleeping?
Okay. This is a hypothetical scenario.
Okay.
I've never actually done this. Just to be clear, I've never actually done that. Hypothetically,
I believe you. Okay, continue.
I'm just trying to describe the emotional impact.
Okay, let's go.
Like hypothetically speaking,
I'm on the train.
If I woke up dressed in women's clothing and had a wig on, I'd be like, what happened to me? What am I doing? What's going on here? What the heck? But in the dream, there was none of that. I was simply accepted that I was trying to present myself as a woman. And yeah, it was so weird. And I was like, I wasn't just a trans woman. I was like, you're like pumpkin spice loving type
California white girl.
Yeah, what's
trans David?
What's otherwise known as a basic bitch. Yeah, I was one of those, which makes it even more bizarre.
It's like the polar opposite.
So I was wearing skinny jeans.
Oh.
I was wearing some kind of blouse or something.
Oh God.
I had a blonde wig.
Oh, you had a blonde wig.
And this is back in that day. I had a shaved face.
Yeah.
And I was much thinner than I am now. So it wouldn't have been nearly as much of a stretch for me to don that apparel as it is now. I mean, it would obviously be a stretch just in general, but it wouldn't look, it didn't, it wouldn't
fit
have
better back then.
Yeah, it fit better back then. I wouldn't have been walking around with a full beard plus a blonde wig and trying to
Have you guys heard about the new IPA?
Cram myself and cram my fat butt into some skinny jeans. That wouldn't have happened.
Okay.
I definitely would have wore it better.
Yeah, you wore it.
I definitely would have wore it better at that time in my life than I would now.
Okay. All right.
But if that makes it doesn't make it any better.
No, it makes sense though.
But
I get what you're trying to say.
It's just bizarre in every single way.
It's so bizarre. Like I've had those dreams where like the nightmares that are like horrifying. You're like, I don't want to have that again. But like those dreams where you're like in your body, but you're different. There's something different going on. Like like it makes me wonder, David, like, are there more Davids out there? is there a basic bitch to trans David out there
Well,
in a different universe?
If my dream is anything to go by, then
Because
I
that
guess there
David means
is.
Jesus, David. You need to connect with that one.
Oh man,
Imagine having that conversation in that multiverse. You're like, hey, bro, I'm you from another universe. You're like, whoa. And you're like, it's way better. Trust me. You're like, what? No, I'm joking.
oh man.
Because if I go back to my younger self, and you know, I'm older and I'm much more rotund than I was back then. I'm gonna be like, it's getting better. You're like, really? And I'm like, no, trust me, dude. Trust me. It's gonna get better. You know. But regardless, that's fascinating, David. Fascinating.
Yeah, and
super interesting.
What's interesting is I remember a little bit.
Were you still in California, like the same vicinity?
Yeah, same everything else.
Okay.
Like I was
Just
still
that's-
living my same life.
Okay.
So like I was just
Yeah.
taking some Butte College classes immediately post high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so that part of my life was no different. I was still the same person, except I was walking around in women's clothing.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah, it was very strange. But I remember now a little bit of why I wanted to go into multiverse and quantum mechanics.
Okay.
Because it's really interesting how the concept of multiple universes and parallel dimensions, you know, has been captured the popular imagination for a long time. But it's interesting now. It's interesting that now it's become one of the more leading explanations for the peculiarities. I hope I said that right. Of quantum mechanics.
Yeah, you got it.
It's because it's rather interesting. See, so quantum mechanics is such a strange, fascinating field. It started off entirely theoretical.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but as technology improved and our ability to see into the subatomic realm improved, we started seeing things that results that bore out the predictions made by quantum mechanics before we ever actually had the capability to see them. So that in and of itself is fascinating, that the math actually predicted what we ended up observing. But what's even more fascinating about quantum mechanics is that when you get down to the subatomic level, stuff starts to behave in a way that is very bizarre from a Newtonian physics perspective.
Okay.
So you have what's called classical physics, which involves the physics of things we can see and touch with our own eyes, with ourselves, without the aid of technology. And then you have quantum physics, which explains what happens in the subatomic realm. And the vast difference between those realms is incredible. Like in the normal everyday life, you don't expect someone to say walk through a wall or disappear and then reappear in another location, or, you know, bizarre things like that. But bizarre things like that happen in the subatomic realm all the time.
Okay. Huh.
And so the real question is how to harmonize the two. What's the explanation for why things we can see act one way and things we can't see act another way? And so that's where the many worlds interpretation of quantum physics comes into play, which has become, I think it's one of the more popular ideas in the quantum physics scientific community at this point, if I remember correctly. And so you have the idea that because other interpretations of quantum mechanics rely on a phenomenon called quantum decoherence, where everything, where at a certain level subatomically, everything is in phase, quantumly, because if you don't know, matter at the subatomic level has been observed to act like a particle, act like a wave, and also act like both at the same time in various situations. So even though we think of matter as particles like protons, neutrons, electrons, they also function like waves. And so one of the things about waves is when the crest of two waves coincide, there's an amplifying effect.
Okay.
So those waves are coherent, and this is sound waves, light waves, all different types of waves exhibit this phenomenon.
Okay.
And so when two waves are coherent, they have an amplifying effect on each other. But when a peak of one wave and a trough of one wave crosses paths, it has a destructive effect, and those waves actually cancel each other out.
Yeah, I was going to ask what happens when either they collide or, like you said, the waves crests against each other. Will one overcome the other?
So essentially,
is something lost?
So essentially, a lot of scientists point to this sort of wave decoherence as an explanation for it all, that at a certain point, when you start to scale back, like when you're only looking at individual subatomic particles, you're looking at things which are quantumly coherent with each other. So if you look at the wave function of those particles, those two waves would be, the crests would overlap and they would have an amplifying effect on each other. And the idea is that as you zoom out and start to look at more and more and more and more particles, you start to get decoherence.
And I wonder if there's a way. So you're talking about the wave function.
Yeah.
And you're talking about the quantum mechanics and the decoherence.
So there's a point at which you zoom out far enough, everything becomes so incoherent that essentially quantum physics collapses essentially into classical physics.
Oh.
So that's one leading explanation for the disconnect between classical physics and quantum mechanics. But the many worlds interpretation is a little interesting because it, instead of going after wave function collapse, it essentially puts every possible thing that could happen does happen.
Huh.
And there's a split.
Now, is it created like everything that can happen did happen, or everything that can happen could happen?
Everything that can happen does happen.
Can happen does happen. Is it born out of our ideas, or is it born out of it's born out of us probably, but is it a result of us thinking that and our brains connecting to the subatomic realm?
See, that's where things get fuzzy, because even in the many worlds interpretation, the idea of what like a causal link between two phenomena actually constitutes is, up to debate.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you ask, where does it all come from? What makes it happen? Well, no one can really agree on that.
Yeah, well, it's so, there's so many pieces missing from it that you have stuff like quantum entanglements I was just looking up right now, and the idea of sharing information between these two waves, timelines, for example, or another universe, that could cause a like you said, the waves crashing into each other, decoherence happens, boom, they're dead. So that's a dangerous thing, you know. What's the thing that Doc Brown says? The you could break the space-time continuum,
Yeah.
you know. Or Doctor Who says the fabric of time, like it's a carpet, you know, and this is just one thread of it. But yeah, there's so much missing information that we have right now that the theory is just a theory right now. But it's funny that the science is somewhat there, from what I'm understanding. That quantum theory and quantum physics is there, but you said it breaks down to regular physics.
Yeah.
After it breaks apart?
If you zoom in to where you're only looking at the interactions
The quantum level. Yeah.
At a quantum level, which means you're looking at electrons, you're looking at quarks, you're looking at particles that are even smaller than a proton or a neutron.
Wow.
At that level, quantum physics is the law of the land.
The law of the land, yeah.
And quantum physics is wild compared to classical physics. Quantum entanglement is one of the phenomena that you mentioned is one of those phenomena. You know, there's no way that, like, you know, say this iPhone and another iPhone in China that could, you know, somehow be like linked to each other. Like, say, like it says 1759 on my iPhone and it says 1759 on their iPhone, and my battery's at 38% and their battery's at 38%, and mine has a little picture of a sad cat that says you eated my cookie, and theirs has a little picture of a sad cat that says you eated my cookie. Like, the idea of that happening in the realm of objects we can physically touch and see is ludicrous.
Okay.
But when you're dealing with particles that are smaller than a proton, that thing is actually pretty commonplace.
Interesting.
So, but what happens is
as
you zoom out, at a certain point, quantum mechanics collapses and classical physics takes over.
Okay.
And so
Newton's law just
the idea is that at a certain point, the quantum wave function collapses because you're looking at too many different incoherent particles, and they're all in different places quantumly, and so they're all essentially canceling each other out. So the quantum wave function as a whole collapses, and matter instead behaves according to classical physics.
I wonder what chemicals in our brain are causing this, or at least this picture of, you know, because the real science says, oh, your brain is, this is just a layman's interpretation as way I see it, because I'm a layman in this kind of thing. So the way I understand it is your brain and the chemicals in your brain are bored at night. And correct me if I'm wrong. They're bored at night, and so they create or keep busy by doing something, which is what dreams is all about.
I don't think that's what happens.
Okay. I'm totally wrong. Don't listen to me.
Sleep is actually a very fascinating thing, and I'm totally not educated on sleep, but there's a couple different stages to sleep. There's deep sleep, and then there's also REM sleep. Yeah, which REM stands for rapid eye movement, because if you actually were to like open the eyelids of a person who was in that state of sleep, like without waking them, what you would see is their eyes going doot, 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 doot. And so that's why it's called REM sleep, because it stands for rapid eye movement. And so essentially the function, each of those has its function, but as far as I understand it, dreaming takes place during REM sleep.
Okay.
So dreaming doesn't take place during deep sleep. It takes place during REM sleep. And dreaming is actually... Because
here's the thing with dreaming, David. It's people who say they don't dream. Okay, look, I kind of believe that, but I also kind of believe that maybe their brain they just don't remember what happens.
Well, see, that's the thing, is nobody knows. I actually looked it up. So the statistics on who dreams and who doesn't dream and all that.
What was it?
There's no number.
Oh, what?
There's no way to know. There's no way to tell.
Yeah.
Because
I could have swore I saw it.
There's no way to tell. because you would
All right.
like you could. I think there was one study done.
We're using DuckDuckGo, David.
In the 90s.
No, I'm joking.
There's one study done in the 90s in Austria, I believe.
Okay, Austria.
It asked 1,000 people, I believe, to report the frequency at which they dreamed. So it was like 30-something% dreamed X amount of times per month, like 30-something% dreamed in another range. And then like there was a certain percentage that reported like either never dreaming or hardly ever dreaming. But that's about as far as you can go because you don't know if they're actually dreaming or not. These people were just reporting their experiences.
Yeah, they're reporting their experiences. I don't know, because I've talked to people like, oh, do you dream? And I've had maybe one or two people in my life who told me, oh, I don't really dream. I don't really do that. And I'm kind of like so fascinated by that. And, I'm not saying that I'm like, because the first thing that pops in my mind is like, I'm looking down on you because I can dream and you cannot. But that's not my thing. It's not my thing. It's not my thing at all.
It's more like neither you nor them knows whether they're
your
dreaming
brain's
or
not as powerful as mine.
Well,
you don't dream, nerd.
Well, that's the thing is neither you nor them actually know.
Yeah, we don't know
whether they're not dreaming or not. Maybe they simply don't remember their dreams because that's actually a thing is, as far as I understand it, most people dream a whole lot more than what they actually remember.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think, so there's another thing I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, that on average, people have like 7 to 12 or maybe 10 dreams per night, but they only remember fragments of a few.
I have never heard that.
Really?
It could be true, but
I think it's like
I've never heard that.
I don't listen to me. I'm not. I could have swore but regardless, I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Like if there's quite a few things that are happening in the brain.
Yeah, it makes sense.
In REM sleep. But I'm not saying that I dream every night. I also just do deep sleep. Like I'll lay my head back, take a little bit to go to sleep, and then after some tossing and turning, I go to sleep, and then boom, I open my eyes, and it's like 6:41, and I'm like, what the heck just happened? Like I don't know if that was deep sleep or I dreamed and I don't remember it.
Well, yeah, you're not really aware of the stages of the sleep. But what's interesting is both stages are necessary. So like deep sleep sounds like, oh, if you could get more deep sleep, then you'd be way better off. But you actually need both deep sleep and REM sleep.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
They both perform different functions. So deep sleep, if I remember correctly, is necessary for rest, essentially, for rejuvenation, for just conserving your body's resources. Because if you don't have any deep sleep, what happens? Your body starts to can't keep up with the resource demand that's placed on it. So deep sleep helps stave that off.
Oh, okay, yeah. Like a reset button or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And REM sleep is important because REM sleep is where the mind sort of basically takes stock of all the things that happen during the day, makes sense of them all. Just it's almost kind of like turning a computer off and on again. Like if sometimes weird things happen on a computer, and a program just starts going out of control and some weird glitch happens and you just need to turn it off. And once you turn it back on, it's just kind of like, okay, it works fine now. And our brains are kind of the same way. So during REM sleep is where our brains kind of take the time to just kind of sort of pull everything back in, reset, and start fresh kind of a thing.
So it's not REM sleep, it's RAM sleep. It's a random access memory sleep. Okay.
And the dreaming is actually a byproduct of that process.
But what about food? What does food have an effect on it? And what's the chemical in your brain that's the thing that Joe Rogan talks about, that DMT really accentuates a lot. It's not endorphins, but
serotonin,
I think. Yeah. Because I think the theory with serotonin and with DMT and a lot of drug use will do is, or shrooms or whatever, is it messes with the chemicals in the brain. That's why you don't want to do drugs, kids. But it's fascinating to think that that kind of stuff will open up different avenues. That's why some people will have a conspiracy theory about the Book of Revelation, is that when John was on the island, he like found shrooms or whatever, or was like super high or something. And then he just was revealed to him what would happen. And God was supposedly, in the conspiracy, supposedly talking to him through this, but that's not what happened. But it's interesting to think, like, with DMT is we got into it, David. We finally got it. We made it. It took 5 episodes, but we made it to DMT.
Oh man.
We got here. So I'm so glad. So anyway,
proud.
But it's fascinating to me, just the concept of the effect, because in your brain, there are different chemicals going on. And when you have different things like, I don't know, like autism, for example, some wires are wired differently. Some chemicals are unbalanced or balanced in a different way. That's just how it works in your brain, from what I understand. Like if you're a dyslexic, which I also am, you have wires that should have gone here, but they're over here now. And so that's why you get stuff backwards. That's the best way I can explain it in a less comprehensive manner. But imagine, like, especially like people who are super smart and brilliant. Like, for example, like Freddie Mercury. Like, that guy is brilliant artist, such a talented figure. And you see people like that, and they go and they resolve to, or they dive into things like heavy drug use and stuff like that, that really alters the chemical of their brain. And sometimes you get a lot of really creative stuff out of that, or they just shut down, or it affects everybody differently. And I believe in terms of creativity and dreams and what your brain does, I believe that, like, I think it would kind of fall back on the spiritual side of things. I feel like, and this is a topic I'll say for later, creativity and spirituality and stuff like that, but I feel like those two things are connected in a way. And I feel like the chemical of your brain, I think what I'm getting to, David, is when you go to sleep, I feel like those chemicals are doing something in the state you are in that affect your view on, say, the subquantum realm or whatever, like something like that. I feel like there's some connection there, and we don't know what that is. And
I mean, it's entirely possible, because the thing is, without REM sleep, you will go insane.
Yeah.
You will lose your mind.
Yeah, because
so the reason why we're able to be kept sane,
that's why you can't go without sleep
is
for a long period of time.
In large part due to having healthy sleep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could totally see that sleep, in particular REM sleep, playing a role in creativity, because it's just such a vital function for our brain not to just go haywire.
There's also a science behind it, because usually when the term sleep on it there's a reason there's a term for that, because when there are things in your life that you're like, I can't deal with this. Let me just go to bed. And when you do go to bed, it does give you a refreshness. Your reset button is hit. And that's why it's kind of important when you have something big you got to work on, or a big thing you got to deal with in your life. It's kind of good to just kind of, like we've said in our media episode, to give it 24 hours or 48 hours, or give it a good night's sleep even, and then wake up and then have that be the first thing you work on in the morning. And I feel like a lot of good can come out from that, especially fresh up in the morning. So I don't know. I wanted to share that the dream of other Jake being there, because I find it, man, I don't know why. I don't know if it's because our brains are just wired in a way or something, because everybody's different and everybody has different dreams and it affects them differently. Heck, you can eat a ton of beans at night and your dreams are going to be wacky. Like, that's how different a lot of us are. But I feel like there's some connection And I feel like it's only going to be a matter of time until somebody figures out how to connect both of those, or all three of these aspects: the quantum theory, the subatomic theory, as well as dreams, and potentially a multiverse of Davids. But anyway. Well, David, are you satisfied with this topic?
I am satisfied. Well, I'm not satisfied, but I'm satisfied, yes.
Were there more dreams you had that you're not telling me about?
No. I mean, there's more dreams, but
there's also the aspect before we leave. There's also the aspect of spirituality, and you're like in terms of like, you know, like the monks, for example, or somebody who's really into the word for a period of time, and then their REM sleep and their sleep happens. I feel like because, you know, in the Bible, there are things God will talk to you in your dreams as well. Mm-hmm. So I think that's another aspect of to be mindful of going into that.
Yeah, that's actually interesting too, is thinking about God in relation to quantum physics. Is what's really interesting is I think the reason why so many people cling to this many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics is it kind of explains how we got here. Because essentially everything that can happen does happen.
Okay.
But it doesn't all happen in the same universe. Every time a possible like turning point, whether the outcome could be this or could be this, there's kind of like a splitting point where it happens one way in one universe and happens another way in another universe. So essentially, many worlds is so interesting because it's physicists who don't believe in God trying to resolve the fundamental questions of the universe in such a way where they don't have to allow for the idea of a creator.
And I think the answer that they'll probably be looking for, and the answer that they will most likely eventually get, is probably going to happen. The closer they get to the David, is probably going to happen toward the end of everything as we know it, like Revelation and that kind of thing.
Who knows?
I mean, who knows for sure? But I don't know. I got a feeling.
There's also the possibility of knowledge gone wrong. You know, because you have like the Tower of Babel. Mm-hmm. You know, humanity is recorded in the Bible at a certain point post flood. Humanity is recorded as all living in one place, and they're all being in unity. So essentially, God looks down on them and is like, wow, these people are totally united. They speak one language. They could do whatever they set their minds to. They could literally accomplish anything as a society. And what he does is he scatters them. He causes them to speak different languages. He drives them to inhabit different parts of the earth when they try to build the Tower of Babel. That is a tower that reaches to the heavens.
And this is pre-flood.
This is post-flood.
Oh, post-flood. Sorry, post-flood.
This is like short. This is pretty shortly after the flood.
Yeah, because I think Noah's sons, or one of his grandsons or something, is alive during this.
Well, I mean,
something like that.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
But like Noah and his family settle where they settle, and eventually they multiply and a society forms. But at this point in time, they don't go off and they don't go in their own directions. They all stay in one spot.
Okay. So these are those like
these are the descendants of Noah. Yes.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah, so they're all in one spot. They haven't
talking years.
They haven't gone off to inhabit other parts of the world. They all speak the same language, and they try to build a tower that reaches to the heavens. And God looks down and is like, yeah, they could do whatever they want. They could accomplish anything because of how united they are. And a lot of people sometimes view this as God was somehow threatened by them which is ludicrous. If
Yeah,
you
that's
look at the
ridiculous.
character of God, how could he be threatened by man?
Also, it's Old Testament God too, so you don't mess with that guy. Even though he's pretty much the same thing.
I mean, he's the same God.
He's the same God, yeah.
Yeah, he's the same God.
It's just there was a different covenant later. New
yeah,
covenant.
yeah. Anyway.
Anyways.
So if you like actually look at the story in light of who God is and the fact that there's no way he could have possibly been threatened by the achievements of man, you really start to see that it was probably an act of mercy, that there was probably
the smartest outcome from my feeble human brain could probably conjure right now. It's probably the smartest thing you could have
there
done.
was probably something that humanity was going to throw itself into that they thought was a good thing that would have probably ended up utterly destroying them.
Yeah.
And so with the end times thing, it's like there is a danger to gaining too much knowledge too fast and misapplying that knowledge. So I tend to wonder, like, when are we going to hit that point again, where our advancements in technology and our gaining of knowledge starts to become dangerous to us?
And that's what I meant by that. Like, I feel like the culmination, the unity, that kind of thing, I feel like it will happen later on during the end times, or leading up to it or whatever. But, man.
Yeah, it's kind of
crazy to think about.
Yeah. But, I mean, whatever happens though, the Lord has a plan. So we, as long as we trust in him, we'll be all right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like it's also cool because I feel like, God will give people visions as well and dreams, and he will reveal like himself in them. And it's also cool that he can use different aspects of theories that we have, or the way the world works, like our brains work, our dreams work, or theory works, where he can access those and meet people where they're at as well. Not just in physically or place in your life, but he can literally meet you inside of the insides, of how things work. And that'll probably be how people figure out time travel. Anyway, I think we'll stop it there.
Yeah, it's probably a good place to. We've been going for about
No, don't say it. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, we've been going for over 2 hours now, so
yeah.
Probably a good place to stop.
This
episode has not been the most well-constructed one for sure.
I love how it's like the most complex topics we've come up with are like, because we're both like exhausted. Like, we had a rough couple weeks, so it's like, oh man, it's like we hit the ground running, David, and we kept going. So I'm glad we didn't stop. It's like no effort, we'll do it live. It's kind of like that.
Yeah,
except without the screaming and menacingly. It's Bill O'Reilly who said that, right? Right? It's Bill O'Reilly.
I don't remember.
Effort, we'll do it live. You know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
but
it's Bill O'Reilly. It was Bill O'Reilly.
Okay.
No, don't question it. It's Bill O'Reilly.
Okay, I won't question it. I'm sorry. I apologize. I won't question it. It's Bill O'Reilly. If you take anything away from this episode, know that it is definitely Bill O'Reilly.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to the Snarp Fangle Podcast. We know, I want to take just a second. I know your time is very valuable to you. So thank you so much for just taking the time to listen to us out of your very busy day.
Indeed.
And man, we are very honored that you listened to us, because holy crap, you made it through this amazingly chaotic episode. So anyway, but that's Snarp Fangle. It's a Snarp Fangle. What's a Snarp Fangle? I don't know. Anyway, y'all have a good night. Take care.
Bye-bye now.